I got so excited that I got the audio to work on the video, and then I messed it up right at the end. So it is 10:30 now, and we are going to begin more abruptly than we had planned to with a little Hine Matov.
How good it is.
How good it is.
How sweet it is.
How sweet it is.
To be together on this day. How
good it is.
How sweet it is.
How sweet it is.
To be together on this day. Hine matov u'manayim she'merachim gam yachad. Hine matov u'manayim she'merachim gam yachad. She'merachim gam yachad. Shabbat shalom, Rabbi.
Shabbat shalom. I was not on mute. We are happy to be with you. We are happy that God willing, no amount of technical difficulties will keep us from praying together and saying something that is true and enduring. We are going to be using Mishkan Tefillah if you have it at home. I believe that Jason has already put in the chat a link to the flip book if you want to follow along on this or another device as well. I want to remind you, if you are tuned into this service on our website or on Facebook, because looking for the B'nai Mitzvah, that happens on our website, on our streaming page in the Barish Sanctuary stream. This is the chapel service stream, which is a wonderful service, but contains no children becoming bar mitzvah. So if you are looking to support our B'nai Mitzvah this morning, you're going to want to head over there. B'not Mitzvah this morning, you're going to want to head to our website to the streaming page. But if you are here for this service, boy, are you in for a treat. Because that's what's going to happen. We are going to continue with the words of Ma Tovu, page 74.
Ma tovu, ma tovu, ohalecha Yaakov, mishkenotecha Yisrael, אוהליך יעקב, משכנותיך ישראל, ואני תפילתי לך, אדוני את רצון, אלוהים ברוב חסדך, אלוהים ברוב חסדך, ענני באמת אישך, מה טוב הוא, מה טוב הוא, אוהליך יעקב, משכנותיך ישראל, משכנותיך ישראל. We continue with a reading on page 77. Don't let me fall as a stone falls upon the hard ground, and don't let my hands become dry as the twigs of a tree when the wind beats down the last leaves. And when the storm raises dust from the earth with anger and howling, don't let me fall. I have asked for so much, but as a blade of your grass in a distant wild field lets drop a seed in the lap of the earth and dies away, sow in me your living breath as you sow a seed in the earth. Baruch atah Adonai, rofeh chol basar umafli la'asot.
Rabbis understood that we couldn't start to pray unless we started in our bodies, unless we started first with our Asher Yatzar, our prayer that is about an awareness of our bodies and an awareness of the ways that they work and awareness of the ways that they are not working as well as we'd like. And then the next prayer, the prayer that we've come to now, is the Eloheinu Shema, which is about our soul, and our soul is intimately related to our breath. The Hebrew word neshama, which means soul, is related to the word neshima, which means breath. And if we are going to pray, the rabbis argue the very first thing we have to do is breathe. And I think that the rabbis understand that, like, every time we come to prayer, we are climbing this mountain, trying to reach some pinnacle of understanding, and that we might not make it to the top of the mountain every time we come to prayer, and that we might sometimes just stay at base camp, that we might, and that is not a sign of failure, but that's part of this process, that we might find what we spiritually need for sustenance at base camp. That we might never get past in the process of our prayer on any given day these first few blessings that are about rooting ourselves in our body and finding our breath and trying to remember that even that is enough. And I think there is so much in our lives right now that is trying to convince us that we have to get to the top of all of these different mountains, the mountains of doing work from home or under difficult circumstances, the mountain of caring for children, the mountain of being a teacher or a online school supervisor, the mountain of preparing for high holy days, all of these mountains that we want to, that we think we have to get to the top of, and that if we do not reach that pinnacle, we will not be able to just sit wherever we end up and enjoy the view, even if the view is from the base camp. And so what I want to offer you today is a little bit of an experiment. It's something very new. A new melody and mantra for Eloheinu Shema. And we're just going to sing it a bunch of times and hope that if you don't make it past this prayer this morning, that you get stuck here at base camp, that you look around, that you find the other people who are at base camp, that you enjoy the sight of the mountain from below, that you do whatever you need to do to know that whatever you have to offer in prayer and in this world is enough. So the melody goes like this. We're doing the best we can with what we've got, which doesn't feel like much, but is enough. We're doing the best we can with all we are, which is a lot and will be enough. That's the whole thing. We're going to try it. We're doing the best we can with what we've got, which doesn't feel like much, but is enough. We're doing the best we can with all we are, which is a lot and will be enough. Try that if you haven't already. We're doing the best we can with what we've got, which doesn't feel like much, but it is enough. We're doing the best we can with all we are, which is a lot and will be enough. And then we can try it in Hebrew. Elohai nishama shenatata bi tehorahi tehorahi. Elohai nishama shenatata bi tehorahi tehorahi. Elohai nishama shenatata bi tehorahi tehorahi. Elohai nishama shenatata bi Tehorahi, Tehorahi, doing the best we can with what we've got, which doesn't feel like much, but it is enough. We're doing the best we can with all we are, which is a lot and will be enough. We're doing the best we can with what we've got, which doesn't feel like much, but it is enough. We're doing the best we can with all we are, which is a lot and will be enough. Now, I don't know if you're out there and you're singing, or maybe you're just sitting and you're looking at your TV with your arms folded, but here's what I know about prayer, which isn't enough, but will be enough. That when we sing, air fills our lungs and penetrates every part of our being. And at the edge of our lungs, there are these little things. They're called, I think, alveoli, and they look like trees. And when we breathe in, we feel those trees like there's air moving through the leaves, like it's a breeze. And sometimes it feels like we can't catch our breath, like every breath we take isn't going to be enough. And it's this thing we do every single day, and mostly we don't think about it, but sometimes we forget. So we're going to just take time to breathe today over and over to catch our breath, because that's the gift of this Shabbat, a time to breathe and to be enough. So let that air fill your lungs, fill the trees that are inside of you, and just now breathe in and out and know that you will be enough. We're doing the best we can with what we got. Doesn't feel like much, but it is enough. We're doing the best we can with all we are, which is a lot and will be enough. Elohai nishma shenatata bi tehorahi tehorahi. 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 If you feel like you have enough breath in you, we're going to keep going. And if you feel like all you're going to do for the next hour is just sit and listen and breathe, that's enough too. Our next prayers are the Nisim B'chol Yom, our blessings for daily miracles, which remind us that all around us are miracles. That as we are walking on that journey up the mountain, it's not only the top that is the blessing, but it's every step along the way. We're going to offer these blessings for miracles. We're going to do some of them together. As we are doing them, I'll invite you to put in the chat miracles that you've experienced today or this week or this month or this year. And we will recite some of those out as we pause in the middle for our blessings. But we are going to continue with the Nisim B'chol Yom on page 80.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who has given the mind the ability to distinguish day from night. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who opens the eyes of the blind. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who frees the captive. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who lifts up the fallen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who stretches the earth over the waters. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who strengthens our steps. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who clothes the naked. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who gives strength to the weary. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who removes sleep from the eyes, slumber from the eyelids.
And now an opportunity for the blessings in your life. I'll go first. If you've got blessings, please put them in the chat. We'd love for everyone to be able to share in them. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. All my children woke up early this morning, which sounds bad, but meant we got to spend some quality time together before Shabbat.
Amen.
Barbara, you got one?
Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. I am grateful for the friends who reached out this week.
Amen. I see one from Timothy. He says, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, for opening their dining room, I assume at work, to customers. Amen.
Amen.
Checking both pages to see if there are any others that have come through. You might be holding on to a blessing in your heart. You might be speaking it out loud. You might be saying it to someone who's near you. Karen says it was almost a cool walk this morning for her morning walk. Almost cool, which in Houston is what we'll have to take. Amen. For all these blessings in our lives, the big blessings and the small blessings, the ones we can speak and the ones we don't even know how to put words to, the ones we notice and the ones that sneak past us, for the ones at the top of the mountain and the ones on the journey and the ones that were at base camp and the ones that where we didn't even get out of our car. For all of those things, we all say, Amen. Jamie adds also the miracle of acceptance by this loving community. Amen. And now we continue with our Nisim B'chol Yom.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who made me in the image of God. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who has made me free. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who has made me a Jew. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who girds Israel with strength. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, who crowns Israel with splendor. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Having just said the blessing for the study of Torah, and in Elul, it's traditional, the month that precedes the High Holy Days, to recite the 27th Psalm every day. And we are going to sing a section of the 27th Psalm together now as our Bissel, our little bit of Torah for this Elul season. So Barbara, take it away.
אחת שאלתי מאת אדוני אותה אבקש. אחת שאלתי מאת אדוני אותה אבקש. בבית אדוני כל ימי חיי, לחזות בנועם בנועם אדוני ובקר בהיכלו, לחזות בנועם בנועם אדוני ולבקר בהיכלו.
Muted. We continue with Psalm 150 on page 100. We continue with Chatzi Kaddish, page 106.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, בעלמא דברך יראה לי ימליך מלכותי, בחייכון ויומכון וחיי לכל בית ישראל בגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו אמן יהי שמירה במבורך לעולם לא מעלמיה יתברך וישתבח ויפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה ברכו לעילם עם כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דמירן בעמה ואמרו Amen.
We rise for Baruchu, page 108.
Am I awake? Am I prepared? Are you listening to my prayer? Can you hear my voice? Can you understand? Am I awake? Am I prepared? Yalla-la-la-la, 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 Baruch Adonai, HaMevorach, Le'olam Va'ed. Rabbi, you're muted.
Okay, well, I've been going strong for a second. Thank you. A poem for our Yotzer, or this morning, our blessing for the morning light, called The Buddha's Last Instruction by the poet Mary Oliver. Goes like this. Make of yourself a light, said the Buddha before he died. I think of this every morning as the east begins to tear off its many clouds of darkness, to send up the first signal, a white fan streaked with pink and violet, even green. An old man, he lay down between two sala trees, and he might have said anything, knowing it was his final hour. The light burning upwards, it thickens and stretches over the fields. Around him, the villagers gathered and stretched forward to listen. Even before the sun itself hangs disattached in the blue air, I am touched everywhere by its ocean of yellow waves. No doubt he thought of everything that had happened in his difficult life. And then I feel the sun itself as it blazes over the hills like a million flowers on fire. Clearly, I'm not needed. Yet I find myself turning into something of inexplicable value. Slowly, beneath the branches, he raised his head. He looked into the faces of that frightened crowd. Baruch atah Adonai, Yotzer HaMeorot. Love your neighbor as yourself, you said, and light blinded, we saw that inner and outer worlds are one as you are one. You spoke and we wrote, we reached for you down the centuries, your light moving before us as we climbed, fell back and climbed again, your Sinai of life. Baruch atah Adonai habocher be'amo Yisrael be'ahava.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. 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 Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto, Leolam Va'ed. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto, Leolam Va'ed. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
You're seated as we continue with Ve'ahavta on page 116.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבבך, ושיננתם לבניך, ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
We continue on page 119. Life without integrity is like loosely hanging threads, easily fraying from the main cloth, while in acts of piety we learn to understand that every instant is like a thread raveling out of eternity to form a delicate tassel. We must not cast off the threads, but weave them into the design of an eternal fabric. Each day points to eternity. The fate of all time depends on a single moment. We join now together in the words of Micha Mocha.
Ya la la la, ya la la la, ya la 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 la, la 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 la, ya la la la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la.
We continue with the Amidah, which begins on page 124 as we rise together.
Adonai sefatai tiftach ufi agid tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, v'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, v'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'Konei Hakol, V'Zocher Chastei Avot V'Imahot, U'Mevi Geula Livnei V'neihem, L'ma'an Shemo B'Yahava, Melech Ozer U'Moshia U'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Abraham Bezrat Sarah, Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai, Mechayei HaKol Atah Rab Lehoshia, Morid Hatal, Mechalkel Chaim Bechesed, Mechayei HaKol Berachamim Rabim, Somech Noflim Verofei Cholim, Umatir Asurim, Umekayem Emunato, Lishenei Afar, Michamocha Ba'al Gevurot, Umidam Melach, Melech Memit Umechaye, Umatzmiach Yeshua, V'ne'eman atah lehachayot hakol, Baruch atah Adonai, Mechayeh hakol. Nekadesh et shimcha ba'olam, Kishem shemakdishim oto b'shmei maron, Kakatuv al yad nevi'echa, V'kara ze el ze ve'amar, Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzebaot, Melochor haaretz, Kevodo. Adir, Adirenu, Adonai, Adonenu, Adir, Shemcha bechol haaretz, Baruch Kevod Adonai, Mimkomo. Echad hu Eloheinu, Hu Avinu, Hu Malkeinu, Hu Moshienu, V'Hu Yashmienu, V'Rachamav le'enei kol chai. Ani Adonai Elohechem, Yimloch Adonai le'olam, Elohayich Zion, Ledor vador. Hallelujah. Ledor vador nagid godlecha, U'netzach netzachim kedushatcha nakdish, V'shivchacha Eloheinu mipinu lo yamush, Le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Ha'el HaKadosh.
You may be seated, and we continue with Yismichu.
Yismechu v'malechutecha, shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'korei, oneg Shabbat. Yismechu v'malechutecha, shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'korei, oneg Shabbat. Mikadeshei, Mikadeshei Shemi Shabbat. Kulam yisperu v'yitanu miturecha Shabbat. Yismechu v'malechutecha, shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'korei, oneg Shabbat. Yismechu v'malechutecha, shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'korei, oneg Shabbat. V'ashvi ratzita bo v'kidashta Shabbat. Chemda yamim otokarata Shabbat. Yismechu v'malechutecha, shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'korei, oneg Shabbat. Yismechu v'malechutecha, shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'korei, oneg Shabbat. Zecher למעשה בראשית שבת. זכר למעשה בראשית שבת. ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי, שומרי, שומרי שבת וקורא עונג שבת. ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי, שומרי, שומרי שבת וקורא עונג שבת.
We continue on page 135. If you have the book in front of you, I invite you to join me. Where has this week vanished? Is it lost forever? Will I ever recover anything from it? The joy of life, the unexpected victory, the realized hope, the accomplished task. Will I ever be able to banish the memory of pain, the sting of defeat, the heaviness of boredom? On this day, let me keep for a while what must drift away. On this day, let me be free of the burdens that must return. On this day, Shabbat, abide. Help me to withdraw for a while from the flight of time, contain the retreat of hours and days from the grasp of frantic life. Let me learn to pause, if only for this day. Let me find peace on this day. Let me enter into a quiet world on this day. On this day, Shabbat, abide. Baruch atah Adonai Mikadesh HaShabbat. We come now to silent prayer. However far up the mountain we've gotten, whether we are at a peak or some smaller peak down below, we pause to look at the view from where we are, to look at ourselves, to look at what we are becoming. We take a few moments now for silent prayer.
say shalom, shalom bimamad. Oh, yeah, say shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru amen. Oh, say shalom, shalom bimamam. Oh, yeah, say shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru amen. Oh, yeah, say shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, amen. Oh, say shalom, shalom bimamam. Oh, yeah, say shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru amen. Ve'al kol Yisrael amen.
We continue now with our preparations to read the Torah as we join together in the words of Romamu.
Remember Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtatavu b'har kodsho. Remember Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtatavu b'har kodsho. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu. Remember Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu. Remember Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtatavu b'har kodsho.
A few brief thoughts on this week's Torah portion. This week's Torah portion is Parshat Ki Tavo from the book of Deuteronomy. And in it is this ritual we were talking about a little bit in Torah study. I'm going to share my screen so we can look at it very quickly, briefly. This ritual that was known as the Bikurim offering. The Bikurim were the first fruits that you grew in any season. So you would mark off whatever you saw as the first blossoming buds, and then when they became fruit, you would set that fruit aside and you would bring it to the temple in Jerusalem. And when you brought it to the temple in Jerusalem, it would be this big, joyous festival. It was the first sort of holiday of Shavuot. It looks very different than the Shavuot we have now in a post-temple Judaism, but this is what people used to do on Shavuot. They would all make pilgrimage to Jerusalem. They would offer these baskets of their first fruits. You would go to the center of the temple. You would stand in front of the priest and you would say, here it says in verse 3, I acknowledge this day before the eternal your God that I have entered into the land of the eternal that swore to our fathers to assign to us. And because of that, I have this fruit. And you would hand the fruit over to the priest. And then you would do this very interesting thing, which is you would recite the following passage. My father was a fugitive Aramean. He went down to Egypt with meager numbers and sojourned there, but there he became a great and very populous nation. The Egyptians dealt harshly with us and oppressed us. They imposed heavy labor upon us. We cried to the Eternal, the God of our forefathers, and the Eternal heard our plea and saw our plight, our misery, and our oppression. The Eternal freed us from Egypt with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm and awesome power, and by signs and portents. God brought us to this place and gave us this land, a land flowing with milk and honey. Therefore, I now bring the first fruits of the soil, which you, O Eternal, have given to me. And then you will set the bowl down, you will bow, and then you get the bowl back and you go and you have a festive meal. So this is the formulation of the festival of Bikurim. It may sound familiar to you, not from Shavuot, but from Passover. Why? Because that passage, my father was a wandering Aramean all the way through the story of the Exodus from Egypt, is the center of the Haggadah, is the text that the rabbis used to tell the story of the Exodus from Egypt. They didn't, interestingly, pick a text from Exodus. They picked this text from the book of Deuteronomy, and this is what we recite every year during the Magid section, the storytelling section of the Passover Seder. The rabbis seem to understand in that passage a necessity. Moses and God seem to understand a necessity. Before we get to the rabbis, Moses and God seem to understand a necessity, which is that the people are going to come into the promised land and the people are going to need to tell this story. What's interesting is that Moses is talking to the generation of Jews who are about to cross over the Jordan. And he's saying, when you go into the Jordan, this is the thing you're going to do every year. But he's making a commandment that applies not just for this first year, but for every consecutive year after, when your children will do it, and your grandchildren will do it, and your great-great-great-grandchildren will do it. And every time they will bring their first fruits, they will bring their offering to the temple, and they will stand in front of the priest, and they will say, I was freed from Egypt, and I wandered in the wilderness, and I came into the promised land, and therefore I am offering these gifts. And in each successive generation, we will make them feel as if they are this first generation who's crossing over into the promised land by asking them to recite this story in the first person, so that it's not an abstract story that exists in their history, but it's a story that exists in their story, in their memory. The word memory is an important word in the book of Deuteronomy. In fact, Jonathan Sachs points out that 21 times in Deuteronomy, Moses uses the verb zachor, to remember, and 14 times he warns the people not to forget. And Jonathan Sachs goes on to make a distinction between what he calls history, which he labels as his story, something that exists outside of ourselves, and memory, which is my story. It is the past internalized, he writes, and made part of our identity. History is the answer to the question, what happened? Memory is the answer to the question, who am I? So what the rabbis are trying to do when they shift this passage to Exodus, what the Torah is trying to do when it invents this or celebrates this holiday of Shavuot, is it's trying to turn these facts that are a part of history, somehow my ancestors got to this place, into facts that are a part of memory. This is my story. It belongs to me. I am in it. That's why the major command of the Passover Seder is B'chol dor v'dor hayav adam lirot et etzmo ki'ilu hu yetza mitzrayim. In every generation, a person is required to see themselves as if they went out of Egypt. That sounds nice, but how do you do that? You tell the story in the first person. You don't separate yourself from the history. You make it a part of your own internalized memory. And I was thinking about the importance of story, the importance of holding on, especially in Judaism, and telling over and over and over again our stories. And I think one of the powerful innovations that Judaism makes is that it roots our story in our calendar, so that you cannot get to any festival or holiday without telling a story about our people, such that you cannot separate yourself from that story for very long. At Passover, you're going to tell the Exodus from Egypt. At Shavuot, now you're going to tell the story of the revelation at Sinai. At Simchat Torah, you're going to celebrate the giving of Torah also. At Sukkot, you're going to talk about the wandering in the wilderness and the Israelites as they lived in booths during their harvest times. You're going to constantly be reliving your story in the cycle of the year. The rabbis understood that this story is good, but all of us know the experience of having stories that existed in your family that like no one told you and therefore stopped existing. right? You might discover later in life this feeling of, I wish someone had told me that story. I never knew it before. A story about relatives, a story about long lost ancestors, stories that if we don't tell them, disappear. The story that if you don't tell it one generation to the next, it will cease to exist. That's the nature of history. But memory can be passed on. And so we have to create opportunities to tell our story, and the rabbis create opportunities to tell our story each and every year by rooting those stories in our holidays, in our cycle of the year, so that a month or two or three goes by and we have to tell that story again, that we tell it in bits and pieces. And it speaks to the importance to human beings of having a story, of having memory, of retelling a story over and over and over again. Rabbi Sachs says that because this telling is obligated in the ritual of the Bikurim, that the nation's past becomes an obligation for every citizen of the nation. We cannot escape telling a story. And then he goes on to quote the philosopher Alistair MacIntyre, who emphasized the importance of narrative in moral life. He quotes saying, "Man is his actions in his actions and practice, as well as his fictions, essentially a storytelling animal." What the Torah understands and what modern philosophy is sort of catching up to is that we are our stories. We are the amalgamation of the stories we tell about ourselves and our people. And our opportunity to choose to tell that story is an opportunity to embrace a memory that can inform who we are and how we act in the world. I was thinking about this in the context of this new literary genre called solar punk. So some of you may know of literary genres that sound similar: cyberpunk, steampunk. Those are taking old-timey technologies or modern technologies and extrapolating them into the future. But solar punk is this fairly new movement to imagine a world that we will live in that could be informed where renewable resources are sort of the fundamental design principle of our lives. And more people are creating in this genre. And like other genres, it can exist in different media. There can be stories, there can be video games, there can be artwork, there can be songs, all of which exist in this genre of solar punk. I wanted to share with you as an example a couple of solar punk images so you get a sense of what this design aesthetic looks like. Lots of green, lots of buildings that incorporate nature into them, an idea of a world where we have a different relationship with nature. I was thinking about this is a memory of a world that, this is my favorite one. This is a memory of a world that doesn't yet exist, a memory of a possibility. But what I think that the people who are promoting this movement of solar punk are doing is they are trying to create the possibility to imagine a different future. And they know that one way that we can imagine a different future is through the stories that we tell. And so they are writing new stories, literally creating new literature that isn't sort of the literature that has existed for the last couple of decades, which is a lot of dystopian fantasy. If you're going to imagine the future, it's the world could only get worse. These authors are saying, what if we imagine a world that is getting better? That it's not utopian, but it's a world that we are creating the possibility of being better in. And they are trying to expand our possibility to imagine the future through the stories we tell. And I would argue, though the Torah and the rabbis would be befuddled by the phrase solar punk, that they are engaged in a similar action. They are engaged in a similar activity. And what that activity is trying to root us in a story that will help us understand our future, that will help us understand a different possibility. When you come each and every year with your fruits, with your bikurim, with your basket of offerings, and you say, I am lucky to live in this land because I myself was freed from slavery. I myself was promised this land, and I myself work it not because of my merit, but as a gift by the grace of God, it changes how you act in the world. It changes who you are. It changes the amount of gratitude you live with. It changes how you treat other people, how you treat servants and slaves in your household and around the world. It changes your interaction with your environment, because when you have a memory that shapes who you are, it doesn't just shape your past, it shapes your future. And so what I want to posit as we enter into this season that is about our introspection, that one of the things we might interrogate, one of the ways that we might investigate ourselves and look at who we are and who we wish to become, is to try and challenge the stories we tell about ourselves. Try and challenge the memories that we choose to focus on, the memories that we have of our own lives and the memories we've inherited from the world, to try and add memories that make a more complex story, that help shape a more complex and beautiful and possible future. To engage in the act of the people who are creating this movement of solar punk are engaged in, which is to say, if we choose our stories, we can choose a better future. And that's not to say we should lie to ourselves. It's not to say we should deceive ourselves, but rather to say we should look at the fullness of our story, to try and expand our memory, to include more possibility, because if we can expand our memory, we can expand our future. So my wish for you, my hope for you, as we are only 2 weeks away from the beginning of the High Holy Days, is that you are using this time to interrogate your story, to ask yourselves, what stories have I told myself and what stories have I refrained from telling myself, to use those stories to let yourself expand into new possibilities. So with that as our intention, I'm going to read to you just a couple of lines from this part of the Torah, from Kitavo. I'm going to read the first 4 verses of our parsha, which I had just showed you before, and I'm going to share my screen so you can see the Hebrew, and so can I. V'haya ki tavo el haaretz asher Adonai Elohecha noten lecha nachala v'rishta v'yashavta baha v'lakachta Mereshit kol peri hadama asher tavi me'artzecha asher Adonai Elohecha noten lecha v'samta v'tena v'halachta el hamakom asher yivchar Adonai Elohecha l'shachein shemo sham uvata el hakohen asher yeh b'yamim haem ve'amarta elav higadati hayom l'Adonai Elohecha kivati el haaretz asher nishba Adonai le'avotenu latet lanu v'lakach hakohen hatena miyadecha v'hinicho Livnei Mizbach Adonai Elohecha. And now, having read Torah and brought Torah into our midst, we're going to take a moment to offer a prayer for healing and strength, recovery and wholeness to those in our lives and in our community and in our world who are in desperate need of healing. We offer these words of Mishaberach.
If you are following along in the prayer book, Mishaberach can be found on page 253. May the source of strength who bless the to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Misheberach imotenu mekor habracha lavotenu. Bless those who need a healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen. And let us say Amen.
A few brief announcements on this Shabbat. Our Elul Lunch and Learn series continues this coming Thursday at 12:30 p.m. Our theme for this week of Elul is failure and regret. And I'm teaching this Thursday. I hope you will join me as we dig into the role that regret can play in our work of teshuvah. We need you to register. You can get the Zoom information when you register. If you've already registered for any of the weeks, then you don't need to re-register, but information about that is on our website. And second, I will share with you that our Slichot service that sort of kicks off the High Holy Days in earnest will take place this coming Saturday, September 12th at 9 p.m. on all of the digital spaces where you normally watch services. So we hope that you will join us online for that service. It is a beautiful, I have sometimes said, this is bad advertising for the High Holy Days, but I've sometimes said that Slichot is the best service of the High Holy Days. You get all the melodies, all the ideas, all the concepts of the whole 10 days in like one short, beautiful service. So we really hope you will join us. It will be a great warm-up. It will be a great time for you to test and make sure that your High Holy Days setup you're happy with. That is next Saturday at 9 p.m. on our live stream. We also encourage you to visit the High Holy Days banner on our website where you can learn about all of our High Holy Day offerings. And lastly, our clergy team and staff are here for you now and always. If you need pastoral support or assistance from a member of our staff, please do not hesitate to reach out and let us know how we can lend a helping hand. As we move towards the conclusion of our service, we have not been in the habit of doing Aleinu in these chapel services that are not in the chapel or in the small sanctuaries of each of our homes. But I found this poem this week by I won't say one of my favorite authors, but an author who, whenever I find a poem by her, I love it. Whose name is Winsala Simbroiska, and I'm never sure I'm saying that right. It's called Utopia, and it's about a perfected world. And since Aleinu is also about a hope for a perfected world, I thought I would share it with you as our Aleinu this morning. So I will pull it up on the screen. And it goes like this. Island where all becomes clear. Solid ground beneath your feet. The only roads are those that offer access. Bushes bend beneath the weight of proofs. The tree of valid supposition grows here with branches disentangled since time immemorial. The tree of understanding, dazzling, straight and simple, sprouts by the spring called Now I Get It. The thicker the woods, the vaster the vistas, the valley of obviously. If any doubt arises, the wind dispels them instantly. Echoes stir unsummoned and eagerly explain all the secrets of the worlds. On the right, a cave where meaning lies. On the left, a lake of deep conviction. Truth breaks from the bottom and bobs to the surface. Unshakable confidence towers over the valley. Its peak offers an excellent view of the essence of things. For all its charm, the island is uninhabited, and the faint footprints scattered on its beaches turn without exception to the sea, as if all you can do here is leave and plunge, never to return. into the depths. Our thoughts now turn to those who have departed this earth, our own loved ones, those whom our friends and neighbors have lost, the martyrs of our people whose graves are unmarked, and those of every race and nation whose lives have been a blessing to humanity. As we remember them, we meditate on the meaning of love and loss, life and death. Our congregation recalls with tender memory Milton Wagner, Priscilla Schub, and Beth Krause Johnstone, who've been laid to rest in recent days. We take a few moments now for silent memory. We think of our loved ones whom death has recently taken from us, those who've died at this season in years past, and those whom we've drawn into our hearts with our own. Zichronam livracha, may their memories be for a blessing. As we offer these words, we rise together as one community for Kaddish. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, be'alma divrach yutei ve'al michmal chutei. B'chayachon u'v'yomechon u'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael, ba gala u'vizman kariv imru amen. Yehei shmei rabba mivorach le'olam omea maya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitchomam v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar v'yitale v'yitala shmei d'kudsha brichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tush b'chata v'ne'emata. Tami ram be'ama v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya. V'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Osei shalom b'mramav. Huya asei shalom. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen.
Osei shalom b'mramav. Huya asei shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru amen.
While we are standing, it is traditional in the month of Elul to hear the sound of the shofar every day to let it wake you up to the work of this sacred season. Barbara, can you give me a tekiah?
Tekiah.
And now we will continue with Kiddush and Motzi.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. L'chaim.
L'chaim. And
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz b'tei avon. Shabbat.
Avon. And our closing blessing, our closing song this morning is We Return, I think.
Correct.
Oh, good. I'm really...
We return. We return. We return. Return again. We return. We return.
Eloheinu v'Elohe Avotenu our God and God of our ancestors, we are doing the best we can with what we've got, which doesn't feel like much, but it is enough. We're doing the best we can with all we are, which is a lot, and will be enough. And we say together, Amen.
Nay. We return. We return. We return. Return again.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, Barbara.
Shabbat Shalom, Rabbi.